And there is beauty in this world. There is only beauty in this world. There is only love and peace, harmony and joy, because that is what God is. And God is everything. On this holy ground, in this sacred air that we breathe, that is God. And because I am here, and because you are here with me, we too are of that essence and of that being. And I know that there is only glorified love. How high we can reach, how much we can expand is here with us this evening. And with that expansion and love is grace. Grace in ease of ideas, ease of communication, ease of interaction. And I feel blessed. I am grateful for knowing that this is true. I am grateful for everyone here tonight. And I release my word to the law of that beauty and love and peace. And I say now, and so it is. And so, many things we need to talk about tonight, as well as causes and conditions. But the first one is that I have to fly to Minnesota. Actually, I'm going to be driving to Minnesota, and I'll be gone 10 days. And so we're going to miss the 14th. But here's the question: how do you want to handle it as a class? Do you want to, we could reschedule and extend the 8 weeks to the 28th instead of ending on the 21st? Or we can have a facilitator come in, right? Or there's 3 options. We can choose, but we all have to be in agreement. You can do the homework and kind of as an assignment that week and bring it in, and then we'll share it from everyone. Answer all of the questions outside of class over that 2-week period. So again, we can extend it 1 week, skip a week, take a break, come back, and then finish it the last 2 weeks. We can have a facilitator come in and facilitate it, the discussion, right? Or we can do the assignments, skip the week, but I would be asking you for full participation in the class and sharing of your answers and all of that, right?
I like choice 1.
I like choice 1.
A.
I like choice 1.
Choice A was rescheduling, adding another night, and having a 2-week break.
Yeah.
Okay. And everyone is there? Even people in prac training who I know that you're getting overloaded a bit?
Yes.
Okay.
By people, do you mean me?
I'm just leaving it open. Okay, so I'll talk to Nancy, I already have, just in case, and she's left the 28th open, so that I'll just schedule that. So I'll remind you, come next week, though, it's not the 7th, I'll be gone on the 14th. Okay?
So you remind us again next week.
Yeah.
I will remind you next week not to come on the 14th. Yeah. Okay. And there was something else. Oh, I know what it is. Yeah, I want to look at your bookmarks again. Let's take those out if you have them with you. Because the whole thing around the bookmarks is, remember, we're not sharing them with other people, right? We're just focusing on that ourselves, what it is that we want to manifest. And I've asked you, during the week, during your downtime from this class, to start looking at things and what is the spiritual prototype behind those individual things, right? So what's behind the spiritual prototype of the pencil? What's behind the spiritual prototype of Kristen's bag? Or the blouse or the shirts that we're wearing? What's the spiritual prototype back of these things that created them? And I want you to really think about what's the spiritual prototype between each one of your bookmarks. What is it that you're manifesting? Really, really. Because you think of it, maybe, sometimes I look at things and I say, this is what I want, but that's not what's going into the funnel. I've gotten away from the toilet theory to a funnel. So
Probably a
we're
good
not
idea.
throwing it away, we're adding to the mass. So anyway, just delete that if you would. David's back there like, what? So what is it? So think about that. What is back of really what you wrote down? Are you really in your own sense of self-efficacy, self-awareness, self-concept, all of those things? Did you write down really what you're actually thinking? And do you want another piece of paper? Look what I have. Because it might be time to change it again. And maybe not. I'm just going to put some out. If you want some, pass those down. But what's the essence behind what you were doing? Did you
Yeah, I know one.
Mike? Did you?
Rick, yeah.
Rick. I was talking, Mike's over there. Will you guys make sure that Rick gets one?
Kate, when you say what's the spiritual prototype, what, can you give an example of that, what that means?
Well, remember, this is what we talked a lot about.
Yeah, I know, but
No, I know you know. I'm just saying, bring that back to awareness. So the spiritual prototype is, did someone else need it? Who wants to answer that? What's the spiritual prototype? Yeah,
I think it's the purpose of it.
the purpose? Okay. Do you want to expand on that more?
Well, for example, what's behind the physical eyes in the human body? And it's really to see and discern what's out there.
Right,
And is it essential or non-essential?
right.
I got a whole list here. You want the whole list?
This is great, because this is actually what we're talking about tonight. This is where Troward went in these last two chapters. He didn't actually keep saying spiritual prototype, but you're exactly right. Yeah. It's the difference between, it reminded me of Goldsmith, Practicing the Presence. And Goldsmith he wants us to ask ourselves, are we asking, let me make sure I get this right. He asks us, what are we seeking? Is it God that we are seeking, or are we seeking something from God? Right? And that's the difference in the spiritual prototype. Because the spiritual prototype is God in every manifestation.
I think the simplest, for me anyway, or the one that really I saw clearly was that the heart represents love.
Right.
And that the head represents understanding. So that these are things that are really important to understand too. I see why he went that way.
Right.
Because otherwise, I always questioned, what are we here for in the first place and what's going on? And so to find these details, it was fascinating.
Right. Right. So in order to really fully understand that, then we really fully have to understand the principles that Troward sets forth, and the principles, hence, of science of mind.
So is a spiritual prototype the same thing as a spiritual principle?
That's a very good question. I think not. But that's my mind, because I think that we can all interpret those principles differently. Principle is not bound by precedent, is a spiritual principle, right? And so how we interpret that is all different. So I don't know if that would be the same thing.
So if we're saying, for instance, that, I just use the example, if we're saying we want a new house, then, but what we really want is prosperity or security or safety, then what's back of the house that we want is the spiritual prototype?
Right.
Is that an example?
And that's what Jenny was saying.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Could it be called the spiritual correspondence, not principle?
Spiritual correspondence? I was just using Troward's words, yeah. But we can evolve from principle. What would that mean if we called it spiritual correspondence? How would that change spiritual principle?
Well, it doesn't change the principle, but I think it's an aspect of it, and it just reminds me of the fact that we've been taught in Science of Mind forever that you need the law of correspondence. You need to have the same vibration of what you want,
Right.
and I think that's what we're.
But what is the vibration? Go ahead.
What's the definition of correspondence? Because to me, correspondence is like I'm corresponding with you,
Yeah,
which then
communication,
denotes
yeah.
two-ness,
No,
which is
it's-
separation.
It's more like the vibration that I was talking about.
Okay.
A
Okay.
similar
Similar
vibe,
vibration.
similar vibration or
So
energy.
Corresponding.
But what is that vibration if not God?
Oh, it's God, all right.
Right.
No problem.
So perfect health is different for everyone. So is the car or the house, right? The idea that I would feel safe in the same house that you do is probably not true, right? And so my idea of what health is for me is different from what it is for you as well. And because each one of us is an individualized essence of the one spirit, right? Then that is God right there. So whatever we put into it is what we get out of it. So when we go back, the spiritual prototype has to be almost, I hate to say, I don't want to say pure, but it needs to be clear in our minds that we are, that if we're God, and this is what he's saying in this chapter, that both positive and negative come from the same source, right? Come from us, positive and negative, each one come from us, whatever that might be. But there is no duality because it's all the same. And that's the paradox, right? So there is no bad health or good health, there is only health, right? And if there is only health, that's when what we perceive people to kind of come out of it, because we see them then in the purest form as God. We can hold that God consciousness of them. Does that make sense? It's the same thing with money, which we were talking about earlier. We can have all of these, Mike and I were talking about earlier. We can have all these demonstrations. You can find $5 on the sidewalk, you can get $150 in the mail. You might even get a car given to you or a big contract, but those are spurts of energy based on it. But if we are God, then we are prosperity. And all of those things will come to us just because we are in that flow, so to speak.
So the spiritual prototype would be prosperity, and the thing that comes would be secondary causation.
That's right.
If that's true, I'm totally lost. Totally lost.
Totally lost. How is it different from what we've already said?
How would prosperity be the prototype? Isn't prosperity what you're asking for, and then there's a prototype behind prosperity, which is the deeper, pure meaning, or?
Okay, I'm not sure if I'm understanding either of you correctly now that you're both talking. But this is what, it's that sense of the energy of when you see that, we talked about this early on, when you see that dollar bill on the sidewalk, we all know what that looks like. And that we get this sense of energy, right, from that piece of paper matter. We go, a dollar bill. That is the recognition of prosperity to me.
So, the energy is the
I think that the recognition of the energy is the prototype. I think the energy is the prototype, the recognition of it and the definition of it. However that is said for you, right? This is confusing, and so anybody's input is welcome.
Yeah, well, my input is, however you set it up, that's how it works. If you set yourself up as I'm just the flow of God and everything comes to me automatically, it does.
Right,
And if you want to do the magic thing, oh, I'm gonna do a little ritual and it shows up, then that's how it works for you. You know, it's really, everything comes from consciousness to begin with.
that's right. That's right, and we said that early on too, but what you put into it is what you get back, right? So if you put in a car with a flat tire, you get a car with a flat tire, perhaps. And if you're willing to settle for that, then that's great, then that's what you got back, right? You got a car, it has a flat, I can change that, right? So it depends on where our self-concept and awareness is as we put it in. Yes,
So, is it because you don't think prosperity, like you don't look at prosperity as a God quality, or is it
No.
not prosperity is not the issue, but the fact, because the way I was looking at it before this conversation was, the God qualities would be first cause.
Yes.
So, love, safety, freedom, blah, blah, blah. The God qualities are first cause, so that's where you not should, but that's where you can come from to get the highest vibration and the best flow. I think of the spiritual prototype as like he talked about in the book, where he was talking about, sorry, hold on, let me find it. I'm not sorry.
are you going back in chapters?
No, it's causes and conditions.
Okay.
The part where he talked about the universal versus the individual, and I forget the exact wording that he used. So the universal would be first cause, it's the God qualities, and then the individual creation, like what I'm personally creating, I look at that as the spiritual prototype.
Right.
So I'm impressing my spiritual prototype onto the first cause. So I see it as two separate things, and then, but the closest you can get them to be the same, then the easier and better or more higher vibration
Right,
manifestations you'll get.
Right.
But I've been seeing it as two separate things. Like, I don't think first cause is the spiritual prototype, necessarily.
okay.
It's a prototype of, the prototype
Right.
is of the
Right.
first class.
I agree with Stu,
Well, just in that one thing I
so
said.
I'm not one.
Just on that one page.
No, Kate, if I were to say if I were to be treating for joy, which is pure in itself, you know, not a car to bring me joy, but joy itself, what would the prototype be? Isn't the energy behind joy, because joy is so pure?
Would it be a
Right.
type prototype?
Troward says that we're always impressing upon first cause, and that's what goes into the subconscious.
Yes.
And so if it's whatever your perception and energy behind joy is, if that's what you want, then that's what you'll get.
And that is.
That's the prototype.
But you have-
Because I think,
It's the
You have-
energy impressed upon the concept in that way.
like, I have an idea of what joy looks like to me, right? So joy would be the first cause, and then the way that it manifests in my life is gonna be individual to me. So if we're both treating for joy, it's gonna show up differently. So what I'm impressing into it, like my meaning of joy or how joy shows up for me would be my spiritual prototype. But the first cause
Yes.
is joy no matter who it is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's weird.
First cause is
It's all God.
Right.
All God. The teaching symbol, that whole thing about first cause manifestation into matter is just only a teaching symbol.
Right.
That the truth is that it is all God. So if you see joy as God, right, and yourself as God, then there's no problem. You just are filled with joy at your level of understanding what joy is, which could be incredibly high.
I hope that was treatment, because that was good, I'll take that.
Right, and then as we go further in this teaching with Science of Mind, the whole point is when someone comes to us with health or money or anything, we hold them, we hold each other and try to hold ourselves in that moment of knowing that you are the essence of spirit.
Back in that first cause.
I look at it as kind of above first cause, but we're impressing upon it. You're right. You're right.
Above first cause.
I know. I know.
Damn, she has a 0 cause.
I look at it kind of like, because we are always impressing upon first cause, but before first cause, there was thought and God. God is thought, right?
Mhm.
We are thought, we are essence of God. This is how my mind works. I'm not saying it's right for everybody. I'm saying this is how it works
Well,
for me.
there's the
And how I-
void encompassing all that.
And how I understand Troward. And so I look at that. When Troward says, note the word consciously, because whether consciously or unconsciously, we're always using first cause. Right? So there is something back of first cause. And whatever is back of first cause is God.
Seems really semantics.
Yeah, it's
basically.
really semantics, because I think of first cause as God.
Yeah,
I kind of hear that, what?
She
I
thinks
said
the first cause is God.
As God, like you can't get behind first cause, because first cause is
Right.
Yeah.
the,
You can't think about it.
First cause is spirit, first cause is God, first cause is the great I am, conscious mind, purposeful, self-propelling, self-existence, volition, right? This is where volition is. Knowing all, only all, Father, Mother, God, all of those things.
so you're going behind that?
I'm just saying, I'm saying that I am not the teaching symbol. I like the teaching symbol because it makes it clear in my mind, but the teaching symbol doesn't tell me that I am God. And I'm saying back of that teaching symbol, there needs to be a recognition
Okay, so
That I
you're
am
just
God.
going to oneness.
that I am an essence of
Because I think
the
of
overall.
I think of first cause as oneness.
Do you think of yourself as first cause then?
Yes.
Okay, see, and I look at that as something outside of myself that I impress upon.
Okay. See, that's second
That-
cause,
and you
or
just
that's
vote.
that would be the spiritual prototype.
That's, okay,
Jimmy
Okay.
has statements to make.
all right, so do other people, yeah?
Yeah. One of the things that I think Troward said in another book was that matter is spirit slowed down to visibility. So spirit ultimately is first cause
Okay.
in that phrase, I think.
I agree with the teaching symbol, I absolutely do. But I see it as a teaching symbol that was created by us, and I am past that. If
I
I,
didn't realize.
in my gloriousness, obviously, I all of a sudden I feel like I am God and you don't understand. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that I believe that there's more than the teaching symbol. I believe that there's something,
Yeah.
because we've impressed upon this teaching symbol as human beings. So, and the point is, what Troward is saying, until we believe we are that manifestation, all other manifestation will only be in bursts of energy.
Right.
Yes.
We
You
were
say
saying
right,
the same
but-
thing.
Wait, I want, this gentleman, I'm not sure of your name, but you were saying something.
Oh,
What is your name?
I'm Tom.
Okay.
Well, I come from the Kabbalah, and there's like the three unknown, aspects of the void, veils, which are unknowable, and then, when you have consciousness and thought, then you're in the crown, and then things manifest down and solidify as the physical plane. Does that make any sense to you? Well, I equate the teaching symbol with the tree of life, so,
Yes,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
all right. So essentially, you're saying the same thing.
It is.
Thought goes in, thought creates manifestations. Right, okay. All right, so are we kind of in a level of agreement? If we're not, let's keep
Do we
talking
have
about
to
it.
be? Do we
Yeah,
have to
Charlie. Wait, what did you say?
Do we have to be?
In a level of agreement? No, I would like a level of understanding, and
Yeah.
that would be recognized to me by like, yes.
Yeah, I always like to take things to a real-life example. This last week, I was down in Atlanta at a Circle of Love gathering retreat, and one of the breakout workshops was called Gay and God. And I walked into this meeting a little bit late, but they hadn't started yet, so it wasn't really late. And as I started listening to everybody talk about their experience with recognizing when they were gay and the experiences, whatever, I got to looking around, and about half the people that were talking, I had no idea they were gay. And I got to looking around, and I thought, am I in the right place? And finally, somebody else said, well, I'm not gay, and I thought, well, but anyway. At that point, up goes my hand, and I say, and Lisa Ferrero, David Alt, and a couple other gay people were up there, in chairs so that they could field questions. I said, how do you want me to love you? Do you want me to love you unconditionally? Or do you want me to love you through understanding and compassion? And Lisa Farrell gave a beautiful answer. Everybody seemed to agree with it. He said, just love us. Said, and Lisa looked at me and said, I don't understand how anybody can be straight. So I don't expect you to understand how we could be gay. But just as long as you love us and we love you, who cares? So to me, the loving is the first cause. The understanding and compassion is secondary causation.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's how we live this stuff, is those things we don't understand, we still love.
Right.
And sometimes it's just as well if we don't understand it,
Right.
because to understand it, we would have to go there. In fact, she said that,
Right.
Maybe you need to be, no, that's not gonna work,
Right.
So anyway, to me, that's one of the definitions that I can live with, that I can
Okay.
be.
All right, I think that makes sense. Anybody else want to comment on what we were just talking about? Pardon?
Make complete sense.
I think that ties it up. So, so I made a lot of notes. I liked this chapter a lot. I think I say that every week, don't I?
It was very thick with stuff.
This was.
It was.
Yeah, it was.
So, taking stuff back to the spiritual prototype, especially what we're asking for, right? If we can see it in its spirit form, so to speak, right? And accept it as that and love it as that, that's when we hold that in consciousness, right? And then you use the word correspondence, which actually Troward does use. He says all correspondence, positive and negative, is related to the same cause. So, and he says the condition, positive or negative, is never primary cause or first cause, because it can never be negative, because negation is the absence of, right? And the quote out of the book about that is, if I can find it, is the thought image or ideal pattern of the thing is the first cause, relativity to that thing. It is the substance of that thing, untrammeled by any antecedent. How do you say that word?
Antecedent.
Antecedents. And conditions. So that's what you were asking, is that right?
Chapter 9.
Yeah, this is in chapter 9. It's at the very end of the first paragraph.
Oh.
At the very end of the first paragraph, he says, the only way to escape is by rising out of the region of secondary causes into that of primary causation, where the originating energy is to be found before it is yet passed into manifestation as a condition. This region is to be found within ourselves, right? Okay. So that's where, Kristen, you and I were going back and forth. We're actually saying essentially the same thing. I'm just taking myself out of the teachings of it.
I wasn't in the teaching symbol. I didn't know we were even there.
And so, you better get in that symbol.
Why? So that I can then get back out of it with you?
So, your ideas, the thought, image, ideal pattern is relative first cause. Go ahead.
I really liked the part on the previous, still in the same paragraph, but like.
Yeah, that
you know,
paragraph's like 2.5 pages.
2 paragraphs, where it should have been 2 paragraphs before, where it says, from the simple example, we therefore see that every positive condition has an exact opposite negative condition corresponding to it, and that this correspondence results from their being related to the same cause, the one
Right.
positively and the other negatively, and hence we may lay down the rule that all positive conditions result from the active presence of a certain cause, and all negative conditions from the absence of the same cause. I really like that.
Can we say run-on sentence, just everywhere? Just-
Run on paragraphs, man.
Yeah.
Well, it was the lecture, he was talking, right?
Right.
But then he got all snipey.
He does get snappy.
You had too much coffee.
So that's the question, are we consciously or unconsciously using
Right.
first cause? And in like a simple example in the bookmark, are you using first cause in bookmark, or are you asking something from God?
The way I looked at it was if you have like a disease showing up, it's not because you're creating the disease, it's because you're not creating health. And so all you have to do is create health.
Right.
Like you don't have to uncreate anything, there's nothing to
Right.
uncreate, you just have to create health.
Right, but this is true, but everyone's perception of health is different, right?
Right.
So, back to the prototype then, for held each individually. If someone is God, it doesn't matter what their manifestation, outward manifestation of health is, because that's a judgment that we hold.
Right,
It only matters to you,
right.
right? And this is something I've struggled a lot with, because, and Christy heard all about it in my class, because I argued this point a lot, because I didn't fully understand it, but I think I've got a really nice grip on the outskirts of it now, right? Because my judgments still come up, right? One of my closest friends is someone with MS, right? She firmly believes she has it, and I try to run around thinking, no, she doesn't, no, she doesn't, but it's like, how does that work, right? How does that work? It works because I can see the God spirit in her. She's one of the most lovely women, peaceful, accepting women I've ever met in my life. And I can see her as God. And I can hold her in that image in perfect health and whatever that manifestation is for her. And hold that. And that's what I try to do, right?
Right. Well, I was talking about for myself, so if I have something come up
Right.
that I don't want there, I don't have to uncreate that. All I have to do is realize that I wasn't creating health and now I create health.
Right, but I'm just clarifying that, because
Right.
it's, everyone's perception of health is different.
I have no problem with that.
Okay.
You do your own thing.
So, and it's what's back of that perception that's important, right? Because you might live to be 120 with absolutely no pain and you can still run a marathon, doesn't mean you're in perfect health. It means that you have good legs, right? I don't know what that means. It might mean that you're in perfect health if that's your idea of what perfect health is. So what's back of your ideas? That's what he's asking. He's asking again, are you seeking God, or are you seeking something from God? And if everything is God, you have to come to that realization. That's essentially what he says in his little, like, paraphrasing. You're like, no, he's not, or maybe he
Oh,
is.
no.
Okay.
I was,
So let's go on. So, are we consciously or unconsciously making use of first cause? The end result is already secured, right? That's something that he says. He says the end result is already secured because it is the direction of the larger coordinated movement by spirit. It is the direction, not the quote, not the quote unquote, mental science does not offer a premium to idleness. So that, I love that. Mental science does not offer a premium to idleness. And he says that, what paragraph? That would be the third paragraph. 1, 2, 3 is a short one. 4. He says it in the middle of the 4th paragraph after that really short
Page
one, which
59.
was a kind of a surprise. Mental science does not offer a premium to idleness.
What's that?
And that's that thing that I know I've done in my own life. It's kind of like I'm feeling a little short of cash, and I'm like, I know that I am abundance, I know that God is all there is, I know that in that space there's all this money, and it comes to me easily, it flows to me, and I have that thought, and then I go away and I go to work and I don't think of it again. And I might get $20, right? And I'm like, oh, the universe is giving me money. Like that, but the truth is that I don't really, the truth is that I'm not in it. I am not it in itself. And I'm just flashing on that. And I look at that as idleness, right? That if I really want all of that stuff, then it's something I have to practice all the time. Not only in the morning, not 2-3 times a day, but even at work, or even here now at work, especially with my 14, 15-year-old students. And I'm like, you are the eyes of God. I know it. I know it. As I'm like going F, And that's kind of a contradiction in terms right there, isn't it? So anyway, I live with it all the time. But do I practice it all the time? No, I'm working on it. Right. And that's all any of us can do for evolution, is that we continue to work on it. And that's what Troward is talking about.
He says that, very clearly, at some point, once you've treated, let it go.
Right.
And that's showing a trust in the creative process.
Right.
Let it go, don't mess with it anymore, it's out there, you did your part, now
Right.
let it be.
Right, and I'm asking you to keep looking at your bookmark and refinance it, and kind of, right? Refinance it, look at it again and put new energy into it and change it. Are you
It's an
sure that's
exercise.
what you were asking? Yeah, has it changed as we've gone on? As you've become more aware? Breezy's no, she's aware. It's changing right now as you speak, don't you think? Manifesting in its own right?
My thing was so general, it's not changing.
Okay. Then that's the test case. So, so what is then beyond appearance? Let's ask you that.
What
If
is-
it's so general, what goes past the appearance? How do
I'm
you
not
know
sure.
when it manifests?
Oh, because there will be changes.
There will be what?
You don't know what my statement is, so
Yeah,
what I say doesn't mean anything to you.
okay. All right. So, yes,
I was trying to find the page, but he didn't say just to sit on your butt and expect it to come to you. He said, when doors, when doors are open, you need to, move one foot in front of the other.
Right.
Because this could be the path to where you actually want to be.
right,
So,
that's exactly what he says. If you
just
sit on
saying
your
it,
butt, if you
yeah.
only pray once a day, if you don't really embody the teaching, then you might have a burst of energy, but it doesn't reward idleness, is what it says. Yeah, you're right. We're saying the same thing, I think. Don't you, it doesn't feel that way?
like, I can't just sit here and say, and so it is, and then go about my business and ignore the fact that the police officers just told me if I slow down, I'd get there. And the next person says, if you just slow down, you'll get there. And you get there, and you've missed all the sign, well, I'm not mean to be nasty, I'm sorry if it sounds that way.
No,
We all do it. There's
Right.
signposts come up and signposts come up and then some knocking on your head, and are you gonna read the signpost, are you gonna pay any attention?
right,
Because it's always working whether we work it or not.
exactly that. it's always working, but it may not manifest in the form that we want it to.
Well, it's like you said,
Right.
I think this might be, I don't remember who said it, but it's treat and move your feet. Don't just expect things
I
to
think
come and
Charlie
move
said
forward.
Yeah.
Are you the one who
Move
said
your
that?
feet. I'm just teasing.
That's
I think it sounds more actually like an AA term to me, but if they've been saying that forever, it's not out of these books.
Yeah, I know it's too recent for Ernest Holmes and
And
those
it
guys.
actually goes back to Francis Leahy. He's the one that coined that, I think.
Ah, okay.
No, he didn't coin it.
Yeah.
It's been around forever.
No, I'd have a hard time saying anybody was the coin of any statement. Yeah.
Okay.
Even Troward, principle is not bound by precedent, was around before that, and
Yeah.
Holmes used it, and a lot of people credit it to Holmes, and it's actually Troward, and someone else had it before Troward. He just took it and added new thought to it. It's always an evolution of the same thing.
Well, like that beautiful phrase, great impersonal power, we are using. I like that. And it's just like, wait a minute, it's just.
Are you reading this book on your phone?
Maybe.
It's a lot of scrolling. That's a little phone.
I talked about the two intelligences, and it's like, we're intelligent, it's intelligent. We can't just expect it, ta-da, and it has to work through us.
Right,
You know, I love that, treat and move your feet.
right.
You know, that's, keep it simple.
Keep it simple.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
definitely not Leahy, because it's a movement-wide saying, they say it everywhere.
Okay, that's
So
where
he didn't
that's where I
coin,
first
there you go.
I wonder where they
It
got it
doesn't
from.
really
Well, it
matter.
sounds like something that would have come up in the 70s, because they started saying things and move your feet a lot in the 70s.
The truth is, it doesn't really matter because it's in consciousness.
Yeah.
universal.
Yeah.
Doesn't really, maybe you coined it.
No.
Yeah, Jenny.
And I think Troward was a genius,
Mhm.
who didn't allow him to talk to people much.
Yeah.
The average person, he was talking and writing to very professional people, scientists, philosophers, etc.,
Mhm.
when he gave these lectures. But at some point, he had a student who asked him about what we were talking about, and he said, give me an example, and a practical example. And he said, well, I did have a woman who came to me, who had cancer and wanted to know what she could do about it, because she had heard that he was so brilliant. And he said, well, I would have to work with you for quite a while, let me see if I can clear my calendar. And then proceeded to, which he did in a couple of days, and he got back to her, and it spent 2 full weeks, almost all day, every day, trying to switch her thinking from the programming that was already in her subconscious to bring it up to the fact that she could overcome cancer if she realized about health. And then it took her a couple of more weeks of practice on her own, and by 6 weeks she was free of cancer. But he had to work with her constantly to help her change and shift that programming that we all got when we were kids.
Right.
It isn't something that happens easily and just by giving an affirmation. You have to really work at it.
Right, and you
And
have to
constantly, as you said.
and have to understand the principles in order to,
Exactly,
Yeah.
and that's what he was working
yes,
with, the
that's what he
principles.
says. We're just saying what he
Okay.
says. Right.
I
He
just,
says that we must understand the principles prior to,
Yeah,
because if we don't, then we're repeating. But you disagree, so what are you thinking?
well, I'm just remembering from the time I spent in the Baha'i faith, there was a fellow who did travel teaching in Africa. And he said, they didn't have to know why.
Mhm.
They knew it was God.
Right,
Bottom line, you know,
Where was this?
in Africa.
Okay, so
He said because it went back, years later, and they knew what he had taught them.
But
were
they
practicing.
believed it.
from the beginning.
They
It's
believed
very
it.
see,
important.
this is
Right.
what Charlie said in the first class, or the second class. He just believed it, and so, and it was so.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the truth, if you believe it. They just believed it. And we've got all this race
I was
consciousness
gonna
that
say,
we have to
people don't
filter
all the
through.
subconscious
Right.
crap
The crap
that we
we
do.
put into
I
the.
didn't say believe, I said no.
No, good point.
Which is the big difference, they just
Big
knew it.
difference.
They just
When
knew
it was
it.
presented to them, it was like the light bulb went on, this is what we've been waiting for, and we know it.
Right,
They didn't have to take the clock apart to see how it worked.
right. Did they have a clock?
Right, that's the.
See, that's the question, it's kind of like, we have the clocks to take apart.
Right.
Did they? Was there the awareness or the different levels of education there that have kind of increased our skepticism or knowledge?
Probably
6 of
not.
1.
Well, a lot of it with us here in the US, in the Western world, is media, input from media and stuff,
Okay,
as opposed to cultural stuff. And when they're the living places that don't have TVs, they're not inundated with all this other stuff,
right,
they don't have so much to break through.
Right. Right, they didn't have all of the issues that we
Yeah.
have, so there was no, they weren't having to clear anything out to impress something new.
Right.
as far as we know.
Cause this
As
is
far
the
as we know,
truth.
because I bet they have their
This
own
is-
little problems.
Right.
Because that's where Troward came from, right?
Yeah.
Was areas that were just having difficulties. There's
Right.
always been
Mhm,
controversy and conflict,
mhm.
right? I mean,
But it would be,
always.
it's like teaching new thought to a not saying that they're at the 5-year-old level, but it's like teaching a new thought to a 5-year-old. There's not as much crap that you have to uncover first.
The blackboard's pretty much erased, I mean, not,
Right.
doesn't have anything on it yet, so.
Right.
Okay, so it's kind of a, all right. But I'm just, yeah.
So, but for
I
us,
just
for
want to be
whatever
clear
reason-
that that doesn't mean people from other cultures aren't intelligent
Oh,
and
no, no.
creative.
No,
And-
not at all.
And it's just a different variation of culture in itself.
Right.
And
And
things that
so-
people are exposed to.
And that the United States isn't better or worse, there is no positive or negative, right?
Yeah.
Just because we have influx of information doesn't make it any different. We can still know in the
Right.
same way.
Right.
No, their phony isn't completely covered up in a file.
Right.
No,
But it's the same
Their
pony.
pony isn't completely covered up in a pile.
Right.
Ours is.
I want a pony.
horses have come up for you a lot.
Pardon?
Horses have come up for you a lot.
I know. Yes, Charlie.
Okay. You trained me not to speak until.
It's
Well
very
done.
true.
To me, the only time us Christians, because I used to be one, would change is when life got uncomfortable. There was a long time that I was in the Christian community, proudly so. And when I knew that Jesus had all the power that I would ever need, and God, you know, was his Father behind him and all that, I got lots of cool things just by praying for it and knowing that God would take care of me, turn things over to God and all that. That all worked.
Right.
Until my life fell apart, and then I said, you know, I need to find out what else is out there.
Right.
And that's when I took that Unity Church bridge over to Science and Life. that's
And found
basically
what was
happened.
actually not out there but inside.
Oh, yeah, then I found how it works, not, because it had been working all along until I started to doubt. And
Okay,
I was tested, or whatever you wanna call it.
right.
And when I went through those tests, I started looking, and I found Richard Bach, and I found all sorts of other writers, Dan Millman, you all have been down that road.
Mhm.
And once I found out how it worked, then I knew I didn't have to depend on somebody else to tell me how it worked. I could know
Right,
that I was the pure essence of the divine, lived within me. I was an expression of God, not, I mean, I was expressing, it was God expressing rather than
right,
expressing God. And all of that made sense.
right.
And to the point of where, at some point, I just knew. And I don't spend a whole lot of time treating and praying and all that sort of, I just have to know
Right.
what I want, and I have to know what somebody else wants. And I never go to secondary causation in the treatment, I go straight to who they are, if I'm treating for someone else.
Right,
And I don't do it. I don't heal them,
right,
I'm not praying for them, I'm praying for my own understanding of the situation.
right, and holding
Yeah.
consciousness. I think that's a perfect way to wind up this portion of our conversation and take a 10-minute break.
Breaking up.
I think that was perfect. Thank you, Charlie.
You bet.
So shortly after 8, please be in your seats. Thank you. The lecture I had with my 15-year-olds today, when I'm talking, you're not? No.
How's that working for
It
you?
doesn't work when I speak to you.
It does not work with
now.
adults, really. But let's go to the last paragraph of chapter 9, and because we're going to use that as the transfer over to intuition.
Is mine causing
And so, one is the questions that they ask in the workbook about, what is beyond the appearance of things. And the other is that if we plant the seed, let's not worry about the direction and the magnitude, right? Let's just let it be. And we can let that be because of intuition, because we already know the truth. And so that's why intuition follows causes and conditions. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, because it made perfect sense to me, and I'd never really thought about it in that way before. Because he says, once we recognize the position of the subjective mind as the supporter of the whole individuality, we cannot doubt that much of what we take to be the spontaneous movement of the objective has its origins in the subjective, prompting the objective mind in the right direction. And I know that's like back and forth and back and forth, but once we know the truth, and it's leaning towards manifestation, so to speak, we know that it's already there. Since we have already planted the seed, we know the flower or whatever is going to grow, right? That you all know that analogy. If you plant a carrot, don't expect a tomato, right? You're going to get a carrot. And so if you plant the carrot seed, it by the same thing. If you plant the seed of self-doubt, you get self-doubt. If you plant the seed of like, well, maybe I'll get carrots, maybe I won't, but if I don't, if I tend the garden, but if I don't, if nothing's going to grow, then nothing will grow. But you can plant a garden, never look at it again, and know that you're going to get the produce, and the produce can be there at the same time. Yes?
I just had a really funny analogy to go along with that one, which is if you have stuff in your subconscious that isn't cleared out, then like when you plant like bell peppers next to jalapeno peppers and they like cross over, you get really spicy bell peppers.
Right.
That's like you get a spicy bell pepper when you have subconscious stuff that you haven't cleared out. It's not what you were expecting.
Right, which could be a really good thing, because I like hot spicy. So maybe because I like it, that's what got planted in my subconscious and that got manifested.
Or when you're told to clear your mind of all thought and the 50-foot Stay Puft Marshmallow Man appears. So,
Perhaps. I'm not going to deny any possibility of the Lamb of God. Much can happen, I don't know. So, intuition is the objective mind in rapport with the subjective mind. The interior voice is heard strongly and persistently, and when this is the case, we do well to pay heed to heed it. And so, people who've had those intuitive flashes, I think all of us have had them, haven't we? Had an intuitive flash?
Yes.
Does anyone want to share about their intuitive flashes? And we heard my story last week, we don't have to hear any more about me. But I had intuitive flashes, I have many of them, I don't always heed them. But ones I do heed are always, and I'm going to use the term profitable, but not always profitable in terms of love, relationships, health, harmony. They're always manifesting that level of abundance in every area of my life when I pay attention to my intuition. Right? So, yeah, Thomas.
Yeah, I had a real wonderful intuitive flash. I had come to visit Asheville and visit a friend, and I was checking to see whether I wanted to move here. And so I went to see some friends in Arden, and I'm driving up Biltmore, and I got to the hospital, area, just going up the hill, and then my heart chakra opened up. So all this love, this radiating that was just so strong and powerful, and so lasted for probably about maybe 5 minutes. And I didn't really know what it was except that, okay, there's this indication that I'm supposed to move here. And so, and then I did have a meditation about moving here in 2001. So I moved here, and then I also was going to find a woman and marry. And so what was interesting was that Sylvia, who I found going on a walk here at the center, she lived right there where I had this heart opening years ago.
Wow.
And it was, she probably lived maybe 400 feet from where it started.
Right.
And for me, that was confirmation that, and it was, and there are other things with regard to her that indicate that this is the right person, and I never did have any doubts about that.
Right. Do you always trust your intuition?
No, but also with regard to people, this is a little bit different. But when I'll like say share something with Sylvia, and then she'll share something back, and then those two ideas come together and actually make a better idea than what one person said. And I don't know whether that's being open to the universe, knowing that, oh, this is even better.
Right. Okay. What about someone else, an intuition that made a change in your life when you followed it? Yeah, Jane.
I read a book about Hendersonville and Boone, which is two of the best small cities in North Carolina. So I came here to Asheville, because that was where I was coming through from Virginia, and it seemed interesting, but I bypassed and went to Hendersonville, and as soon as I got there, I turned around and we came back because the vibes were wrong for me, or for us. And we came back to Asheville, and I drove through the middle of Asheville and chuckled about all the, what do you call them? Hippies.
The busters.
I think this is where I want to stay.
Okay.
It was a message.
Anyone else?
I did something,
Instances of intuition?
I did something similar coming to Asheville. I really had no intention of coming to Asheville. I was like, I was in the flatlands of Georgia, and I just had this opportunity which completely fell apart in Hendersonville. And then another one opened up, and then some other things opened up, and some really weird stuff happened, but I always knew the whole way that like the first cause was, flicking me in the ear, going, this is where you need to be for your
Right.
healing, this is where you need to be. And I'm like, yes, I know, and I showed, and boom, I'm just, here I am, I like fell out of the sky at Battlehead Coffee House, and I'm just like, okay, let's do this.
Right.
I'm here for a reason, let's do this. And then some other weird stuff happened, and some more weird stuff happened, and three-legged dogs happened, and
That's because you were a battle cat.
and so it was just, I just knew I was just drawn, and it all started happening, amazing healing and perspectives that I've been searching for eons.
Right.
Happened, and
So we're talking about these big intuitive hits. What about the little ones?
Well, I had a little one the other day. I was driving back from Silva, and of course, I kind of knew intellectually that I-26 had been having some issues. So my intuition said, you better not try to get on there today. You better take a different route. So I took a different route, and it was a good thing because I-26 was blocked up for hours and hours and hours that day.
Yeah, I was out there.
It wasn't the same day
It
that you
wasn't
were.
the same.
No, it was last Thursday, but it would have taken, I mean, it took long enough to one around, but it would have taken many, many hours more if I'd gone.
And I missed my intuitive hit. As I was coming up on 37, I thought I should get off of this, and I didn't, because I wanted to get home quicker.
So you ready to sit in the parking
This
lot?
has been my life. Maybe this is why I don't get my pony.
If somebody brought you a pony next week though, what would you do with it?
She put it in the living room.
If I had a pony, if that pony came to me next week, actually, I don't actually want a pony. There's something else around that I haven't quite gotten to the back of, but it's more of a image than the actual thing itself. And if I'm not careful, I might get the thing itself and then sell it and make a lot of money. And then there you have it. That was my intuitive hit. It
There
just
you
so
go.
happened that it
You want the spiritual
unfolded in
prototype.
that.
You should replace
What,
it.
Dennis?
You want the spiritual prototype.
That's it.
Yeah, there you go,
The
there you
spiritual
go.
prototype, how it appears is how it appears, and then our intuition is kind of like, is that it? Kind of sometimes, isn't it? When I was at Cumberland last, an amazing trip, I decided I have never in the whole time I've been on Cumberland Island found a feather, ever. And no, the one person I take with me is like, oh, feather, oh. And I'm like, I don't understand why you're getting all the feathers. She said, because I asked for them. That simply. And so I asked for feathers and I went out looking for them. And I walked through the turkey field. There was a bunch of turkeys there yesterday. And I'm like, feather, feather, feather. No feather, no feather. And so I'm walking along the road kind of dejected and just I'm going to the ruins and I think there's a back road that I have never taken before. And I think, take the back road. And I thought, no, just go to the ruins because I'm always looking for the most direct road. And so I thought, that's the problem, take the back road. So I turned, and as I knelt down and tied my shoe, there was a turkey feather right there. And then it was like feather after feather, like I was like, thank you. And then it was like this amazing array, one after another, and experience after experience with the horses. And it was just an amazing, amazing experience for like an hour and a half. It was like one thing after another. And I saw a display of horses, of the wild horses on Cumberland. Do you want to hear this story real quick?
Yes.
They're kind of fascinating. And I swore I wasn't going to tell you personal stories.
Oh.
But so I was there and I picked up that feather and I went walking back to the pond area that's very overgrown and there's a light trail around it that the horses have made. There's a lot of wild horses on Cumberland Island. And so I was following that trail and there was a feather there and I went around the pond and there was another feather and I came out behind this old outbuilding and a whole new herd of horses I've never seen.
Wow.
And sitting in this pasture that I didn't even know was there before, because I've never been on that side of the building structures. And so I was standing there, and all of a sudden the stallion, it kind of didn't really raise up, but he kind of pawed the ground and he whinnied really loud. And two adolescent males shot out of the herd, and they circled the whole pasture, and then they ran that way on the other side of this structure that I was just, 10, 15 feet away from. And I thought, they're gonna come back and they're gonna go right in front of me. And I started backing up, and just as I took a step back, the stallion whinnied again, and one of those adolescent males came shooting by within 5 to 10 feet.
Wow.
And I'm backed into a bush, right? Because these are wild horses.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and the male is like from me to Thomas, and the stallion, and I'm like, where's the other one? Like I didn't want to move. And so the stallion whinnied, and then he pawed the ground, and he shook his head, and he looked at me like, like that. That's how it felt. And he went in and he kind of walked over there, plop, plop, plop. And next thing I know, he's coming back at a little faster walk. And the little boy has got his head down and he's walking behind him. I thought, he didn't listen to his direction. But then the little boy, the adolescent male, went off and joined the herd again. And the stallion stopped about where Thomas is again and turned its back on me so that its butt was to me. And he looked over his shoulder and I'm against this bush, like seriously in the bush like that. And he looks at the ground and I look at the ground and there's a perfect tail feather that's about 18 inches long.
Wow.
And it's between me and the stallion. And I look at it and I look at him and I look at the tail feather and I look at him and I think, this is telling me something. And so I just kind of casually walked over and I kept my eye on him about to here and I leaned down and I picked it up and it's in perfect condition. It's one of the brown golden tipped ones. It's just gorgeous. And I thanked the stallion and he kind of did this kind of thing like, hey. And he just walked away. Yeah. So I asked, right, and I believed it, and I get these weird, it's not weird, these just magical things happen to me, and I believe the more aware I become and the more open I am with love, these things happen to me, and I still question them. I still am like, why me? How did this happen for me? Like, B, one time you said you felt like you were walking on water or cloud or something, and I feel that, and I'm like, wow. After a prayer or a treatment or something, I just am still in awe of how much power one can hold and we can hold in our body, right? And we just expand with it, and we just keep getting bigger and bigger, and what a lovely feeling it is. It's just, whew, it's almost too much to handle, right? And they say, shake it out, come back, come back. It's like, I don't want to anymore, right? But we have to, because then we have to do this stuff right here, right? And get videotaped and stuff.
Just because, I may not, the why me isn't part of a feeling of unworthiness.
Pardon?
It's not a feeling of unworthiness when you say why me.
I think it depends on the situation, but yeah. Right, that's been one of my things. I don't know about y'all, but one of my things is not feeling worthy. I was never taught to be worthy, right? I shouldn't be where I'm standing today if I didn't have principle over precedent, I wouldn't be here, right? Not me. And then I look at all the things I have done, and I think, oh my God, you're an amazing person. And then I think, oh, yeah, but anyone can do that.
Well,
Right?
that's true.
Anyone can have that
Not everybody
experience.
will.
Pardon?
That's true, but not everybody will.
Right.
Or not like you.
Exactly, but everyone's life is just different than mine,
And,
right?
and who are we not to be amazing?
Exactly that. Who are we? So what is it that you struggle with? And that's what I struggle with around intuition, is that trust this? No, because am I worthy of that? Right? What do you struggle with? Yeah, go ahead. No, you don't have to share that. You can talk about anything you want.
I struggle with. No, I think it was what you were talking.
Or you could.
Or not.
It'll come in.
Yeah, it was so
In
fuzzy.
the meantime,
Okay.
a story of intuition, or.
Yes, story of intuition.
Yeah,
Either.
it is- oh. So, a number of years ago, in fact, David and I had just started dating. And, my son, my youngest son, I was living I was in between houses. So I was babysitting a house so that a friend of mine could go and have a vision quest in Africa. So I was staying at her house, I had some of my stuff, there was business for it. So he used to visit, and Michael came to visit, and slept in the second bedroom. And that morning, they were predicting a lot of snow. I went to work, which was maybe 15 minutes from where this apartment was. It was on the second floor. And I kept thinking about the snow and about Michael being there. He's there alone. And I just had a really strong feeling. And I called him up, woke him up, and I said, you have to leave the house. I did not know why, because he usually sleeps much later. I said, you have to leave the house. And I said something to get him out. I said something about, we're not supposed to have, the owners might, I don't know, whatever I said to get him out, I needed him out. In fact, I called later, and he was in the car, and he was out of the house. I went to David's. I get a call later in the afternoon, maybe, because we left early because it was snowing, it was really coming down. I'm at David's house, and I get a call from Michael, and he said, did you hear what happened? That place burned down to the ground.
Wow.
To the ground. The lower level was an office, all the stuff was gone. We went back later in the day, David and I went back. And, I mean, I've never seen the smell, everything. Everything was ashes, you couldn't even
Right.
recognize what was once a TV. So an electrical something or other a pole hit the electrical box, the house went up instantly. There's no way that he would have been able to leave that house if he was still sleeping there. Is that intuition? I don't know what that
Yes,
was.
that's
But it was a very strong feeling. And then, like, in thinking of, like, the rational side of it, well, I wanted him to leave because I didn't want him to be snowed in. But
Right.
that really wasn't it, because
Right.
I was out, in the snow, so I don't know. But the other thing that, so yeah, I mean, coincidence, whatever you wanna call it, I'm glad that I acted on it. So I think depending on belief systems, how you were brought up, and all those things, because things come up in me
Mm-hmm.
that, let's say, an attraction to someone, and the attraction is really strong, and that feels like intuition, because it's there, yes, I don't know why, but it's there. And it's like the worst person in the world that I could possibly be, and yet the feeling is so strong.
Right.
So there are times that I have to say, no, why am I feeling this way? Oh, wait a minute, he reminds me of the abuse of this and that I equated with love and, all this crap.
Right.
But there are times I feel that there are times that so in terms of like trusting my judgment, trusting my intuition, I trust the feeling is there, but I still want to look a little more at it before I act on something. In the
Okay.
case of the fire, I just acted.
Right. Okay.
It was strong.
I think that's a really good point. Does anyone else want to share something about intuition? Big or little? So something else that he says about intuition, which I like a lot, is he says at the end of, at the very beginning of the second paragraph, he said the importance of, and this is kind of what you were talking about, the importance of understanding and following the intuition cannot be exaggerated. I candidly admit the great practical difficulty of keeping the happy mean between the disregard of the interior voice and allowing ourselves to be run away by groundless fancies. Right? And so what does that mean? What is a groundless fancy as opposed to intuition?
So when I fly, every time I have this intuitive hit that the plane's gonna crash, and I freak out, and I'm like, oh my god, I need to get off this plane, and I'm like, no, this is Final Destination. Should never watch that movie. And so I have to like look at it, because I have what like ego feels as an intuitive hit, but it's not.
Okay, so that's a great definition of it, ego. It's
Yeah.
ego?
Yeah, and it's very fear-based, and it's very like
Genius.
fight or flight response all of a sudden. And so then you have to stop and look, or I stop and look.
How do we
like,
tell the difference between them?
if you center, you can tell. I can tell.
When you
if I
center?
Yeah.
Right.
So I have to just go, no, I'm all good, and I just really don't like flying. So, because it's literally every flight, like I'd never fly if I listened to it.
Right.
And none of the planes would ever crash either.
How do you tell the difference to other people? How do you know? Kristen Centerson knows the difference.
I can't tell. Sometimes I get things and I'm like so right on, and then next time it's like, yeah. And I couldn't have been more wrong. It's like, oh my God, how did I miss that? It just felt so right.
Right.
I was just so wrong, like, especially about people, first impressions, and
Right.
I've been kind of good at judging people's character and stuff.
So if with that kind of definition, if we stopped and took a step back and looked at what's behind it, would we find ego? Or,
That must be ego.
let's find out who this is, this might be something.
Hopefully that hasn't been turned off.
Do we find that then?
Well, I find that if there's a lot of emotional charge with it, it's probably not intuition.
Yeah, there you go.
Emotional charge equals flightless fancy?
Yeah,
Just
this-
saying, using
That's
his.
about what she said that she had this intense drawing to somebody that, when you stepped back, didn't seem right.
Right.
Remember? That's the whole emotional thing versus my son needs to get out of the house, which was not even something I thought, and you didn't even think about that.
Like, there's really no emotion to it, boom.
Right.
But the other ego side is you got that fear, you got the emotion, the panic attack, or whatever. And it's, the ego always speaks into this, speaks in the same voice as your conscience and everything else. It's just, when you know it's the ego when it tells you you can't, or doing this and doing that.
Right.
Sometimes it's difficult to tell.
Sometimes, like you said, there was a persistent feeling for you, it was kind of like God, you said, I think it was flipping his ear,
Oh,
right?
more than that, yeah,
Kick,
but.
maybe,
Yeah.
Smack it
Thomas?
back in the
Boulders, hammers.
I think for me, when I have been, I have a duplex and I rent the apartments, and I lived in one side, so I rented the other side. And then I'd have, put an ad in the paper, and there people would come, and I'd interview them, and they'd be interviewing me too, I suspect. But there was just a feeling, a recognition that this is the right one. And people have said, oh, you don't rent apartments, do you? That you can get into this and that. Whereas for me, it was, I always do a spiritual mind treatment, and I always would focus on the right person, finding someone who loved the place as much as I loved the place. And it turned out that everyone was a wonderful guest or renter. And I think it was more of my connection with them and then a feeling about that.
okay,
I mean, sometimes I'd say, whoa, that's the right one, and then they decided no, which was fine, because somebody else came and they were perfect.
right. When we approach practitioners, is that intuition? I feel like it is for me. Like I choose a practitioner based on that feeling I get as I look around the room.
Choosing.
And then, is it manifest destiny if they're the only one standing there? Or is that part of what you've created? What?
Well, I was gonna say, so that brings
Don't
up.
look at me like that.
That's just my face.
Can you
that
tell I
brings
had a
up-
class of 15-year-olds today?
What are you saying?
Nothing about you, just that I can see here that I'm abrupt.
So that brings up the difference between actively using your intuition versus intuition just hitting,
Right, right.
which wasn't something that had been brought up yet.
So what's the difference between an intuition and a strong feeling?
Nothing, according to Troward. Troward says if you get that continual feeling, if you keep getting, he says that in that paragraph. He says if there is still a persistent feeling, you should follow it.
If it continues.
Yeah, if it's persistent, right?
But in your
happens
example, you
sometimes.
didn't need to wait for it to continue. you needed to take action right then,
Yeah.
and you did. So that was a perfect example of intuition.
Yeah, because it wasn't fear-based, and most of my stuff is
And,
fear-based.
yeah, it was perfect.
Let's just get them
example.
out of there. Anyway.
So, yes, Breezy.
Intuition to me is, it's not emotionless, like they were stating. It very definitely has positive emotions or a negative, depending on what the intuition is about. Whether danger like she's talking about or, you know, anything else.
Right.
But there's a calmness in it too.
Right.
Like a calmness, like a certainty type of
Yes,
thing?
yes.
Okay,
A knowing
all
type of
right.
thing.
But would you say it's emotion or feeling? Or is there, are they
To
interchangeable?
me, they're the same.
Okay. I don't know, I think some people
Yeah, yeah.
talk about them differently. I think they're interchangeable themselves. But when we're talking about fear, like that, like Kristen is, then it's different, that's not the same, is it?
It's, yeah, it's.
I'm asking Breezy, hang on. Because I'm, seriously, I'm
She
asking
was using your
Breezy.
example.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's, fear really doesn't have much, it doesn't have anything to do with it to me.
Okay,
But that's to me, you know, how I
Right.
see things.
anyone else? Dennis, do you have anything? You've been looking kind of perplexed. Just thinking?
I read usually I really like, I'm sure not everybody's read Shakti Gawain.
Oh, yeah.
She wrote a book on intuition. I read the book, in fact, I read it twice, and I really didn't get it. Because it just seemed so vague, but then it was a year, maybe about a year ago, in Science Mind magazine, I don't know who was writing the daily meditations, but they were talking about intuition. And they just described it as like a gut feeling. And I understood that.
Right.
You know, after reading all this book and other things on intuition, I understood what a gut feeling was. And Breezy, you're right, it had nothing to do with fear. Fear is, you know,
Yeah.
it's kind of like really good, or let's use the term yucky, you know, to me. And you just pick up, you know, something.
Right.
Especially, it's easy to pick up the yucky part, you know, when things just aren't, as David Letterman would say, when they're kind of hinky, right? You know?
Right. So it's a gut feeling before, like as Troward says, the objective mind gets hold of it and starts putting causation into it.
Right.
Yes, Tom?
Well, in my world, I try and follow my ecstasy, or things will glow and I follow that. But if I'm in a paranoid state, I have to like look at the I Ching or something to like sort out, you know, what's really true or not for me. Depends on my emotional level, really.
Okay. Do you believe when you're doing something like the I Ching that it's intuition that's
Oh, yeah.
guiding the picking of the
Oh, yeah, I mean,
counting of the
my
sticks
mind will
or
go to what I need to find.
coins? Okay, and that you're guided by your intuition in that?
Yeah.
Okay, same thing with things like the tarot and all of those things, that it's intuition that guides the cards?
Oh,
Do
yeah.
people believe that? I'm just curious.
Well, and
Troward doesn't talk about these things, I'm
And
just
your
wondering.
intuition can help you interpret
Yeah, you have to go with
That's the
the
interpretation.
tools.
Okay.
So what's guiding the cards for like tarot cards?
What's guiding the
Magic.
cards, your whoever's energy that you're working with. If you're doing for yourself, then it's your energy, but if you're doing a reading for somebody else, it's their energy.
So how does that differ from intuition?
That takes us back to first cause, secondary causation and manifestation,
Well, I'm just
right?
curious what Breezy.
Well,
You ready?
intuition is a part of it, definitely. Intuition is a part of it, but I never said it wasn't. I never said it
No,
was.
I'm asking though, I'm curious, because
Yeah.
I have my own thoughts, because I do oracle cards, I have my own thoughts about what that is, so I'm just asking you what your
Yeah, I
opinion
just,
is.
to me, it's energy and your interpretation of it, and your interpretation of energy is intuition, what you're seeing it says.
Right.
If you
So-
wanna pick the right card, it's good to have it in a little box and just pick it out rather than just like shuffling them all together and do it one at a time. That way,
Right.
your mind is guided to the right.
And again, it's just another tool, much
Right.
like the teaching symbol, it's just a tool. So, it was, I used to do all that, but now it's like, don't, right? It's kind of unnecessary and maybe tomorrow I'll change my mind again and dive for the I Ching or the runes or something, or the tarot, because I have all of that in my house. But at this point, I'm like, if this is all that there is and this is all me, then I already know these answers. And these are just tools to help get to the answers,
I
right?
don't do it more as, I don't do it for answers anymore, well, I haven't done it in a really long time, but it shifted from gaining insight to like just being a source of beauty.
Right.
Like where I would pull cards and be like, wow, that's beautiful. Like it became art almost.
Right, and it also helps me in that way, like to recognize things I hadn't seen, but also to see what's back of other things that I hadn't recognized. Right, because there might be a phrase and I go, wow, I didn't even think that might be something that was coming up for me. So all tools are valuable.
I mean, you can use it actively too, like you can imagine a particular card representing a certain energy and that's your ritual and that brings down the energy that you need for that moment.
Right, right. Yes,
I think intuition is sort of like the definition of pornography. You'll know it when you see it. Try to push intuition doesn't work. It's
Right.
all of a sudden there it is.
right,
And there's no really logical reason for it to be there other than it's intuitive.
right. Maybe we could find a different analogy though.
Probably.
Could we?
Especially,
Maybe.
forget about that camera.
Bad place early.
So I would encourage people to find a different analogy.
Nothing like remembering
I'm
it
selling
being
the
recorded,
place.
starting to cuss.
Yes, Selena.
The thing I want to remember about intuition is that it's actually the connection with the divine within and the subconscious mind. So it's never wrong. If you know it and you know that you know it, then it's never wrong. It can't be wrong. It has to be right.
Right. So it's the objective mind that, when we get to question it, is when we often end up with experiences that we don't really want.
When we don't follow it, when we don't
When we
follow
don't
it,
follow it,
yeah.
right. Okay, any other comments? Laugh away. Any other comments on intuition or causes and causation? Everyone's good? All right. You
sound surprised.
Because it's so charged, but it's so condensed, and once you say it, how many times can you say it in a different way, right?
That's true.
And so, it's like,
Apparently a few.
you can. I could tell another story, but that would just not be fun. So, that's,
Tell us another story.
do you want one on intuition?
Okay.
You have to be in agreement.
Yes.
Yeah, go for it.
So I had this trip planned to not Cumberland, to Bear Island, Hammock Beach State Campground. And I woke up, it was about a month out, and I woke up in the middle of the night in a total cold sweat. I knew that was not the place to go. And I thought, I am not going to be scared away by my fear. And then I thought, is this fear or intuition? And I talked to people about it, and I was like, I don't know if it's fear or intuition, but the persistent feeling that something was gonna happen continued, but I didn't listen, right? And I kayaked over alone. I often go backpacking in places alone, and I'm very rarely ever afraid. And I kayaked over, and I got my tent set up, and everything was fine. And then the next morning I ate breakfast, and I ate something that I had brought with me that was already spoiled, and I got really sick. And so I was running a fever and I was sick. But my fear when I had woke up in the middle of the night was that I was going to be the only woman on Bear Island with 4 or 5 men. Because it was late in the season, it was about this time, and no tourists, right? And as it was, there was a family there, but by mid-afternoon that family was gone, and I was sick, and I still was out hiking. I felt like I was in another, like, outside of my body state. Like I knew I wasn't well, and at the same time, I had tons of energy. And I was hiking and hiking on the island. If you've been to Bear Island, you know it's just coastline and sand dunes. And so, but I got back to my campsite, and I had asked the ranger before I kayaked over to the island. I was like, who's on the island? And they were like, well, these people haven't checked in yet, and they probably won't. So it's gonna just be you and this family and a couple of fishermen. I was like, okay. And I knew where they were all camping, but I woke up in the morning and 3 guys had set their tent over there, and there were 3 guys in the next campsite, and it was those 3 guys and me on the island, all alone. And I swear, that night I thought, it's all cool. I was like, hey, hey, hey. And they were like, hey, hey, they're standing in the ocean. They didn't want anything to do with me. They were fishing. But that night I was terrified because I thought, okay, I had this hit, and I shouldn't be here, and maybe I should leave, and it's already the middle of the night, and I was sick, and I couldn't have packed my stuff up and put it in the kayak. And so all of this stuff I manifested around this one hit, whether it was intuition or fear. And now there were these 3 guys there, and I didn't know what to do, and I thought, I'm just gonna let it ride out, and we're gonna see what happens, right? But that night, don't be fooled. I was like awake all night long, and pepper spray in one hand and a jackknife in the other. Seriously. I know you laugh, but it's like, what do we do to make ourselves feel safe in the middle of the night, right? I don't know if men ever feel that, but I know that every woman in here can probably relate. How many times do you check the door in the middle of the night if you think you didn't lock it, right? You get up and you check it again. So that's what I'm laying there. I get up in the morning, and one of the men, I hear this rustle, and he's walking by my tent. But he just seemed to be scouting the area, and I was like, okay, it's all cool.
I won't pepper spray you yet.
I just let him go by, and it was like, so where is that man? Did I manifest 3 men coming to the island to go fishing? Right? And then a 4th guy joined them that afternoon as I was leaving under my regular scheduled departure date. And so, did I manifest that, or did I have an intuitive hit? And what, should I have followed that hit? Or would I not have gotten sick? Would I have, but I had this amazing trip again. I wrote half of a book that I'm in the process of writing. I spent that time, it was like, it was just
And what's the difference
flowing
between
out.
manifestation and intuition?
That's the question.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all very different.
And there's another factor, which is telepathy, where you're just picking up on someone else's thoughts. Like,
Someone else's
you know,
energy.
your intuition's gonna know that there's 5 guys there, because that's what's happening, but your interpretation of it is, you know, subjective. You know, like this
Right.
morning I woke up and I was dreaming that I was all alone in the fire, and I woke up and I walked outside and there was this fire outside, and I thought, oh my God, there's a fire out there, and I went down there, and there's this guy sitting around, yeah, I'm all alone by the fire. So there's that too.
Yes.
Yeah, so, do they have banjos, by the way?
Pardon?
Do they have banjos?
Cameron's running.
At the point of making a choice, whether you're going to follow this feeling that you had, intuition, what you want to call it, there's so many variables.
There are.
So let's say you decided not to go,
Mhm.
and you took a different route, and something else happened. That's why, like, to like second guess, or go back, or regret something that you did, we never know what would have happened if we didn't do it.
Right.
It could have been great, it could have been worse, it could have been, it's just, you know, it's just stuff that you happen
Right.
to make the choice to do that. And who knows, you know?
Right, well, yeah, exactly, I don't know. So I get back and I go to the ranger and I'm like, seriously? You had put me right next to 4 men? And they were like, well, they wanted the tip of the island and you wanted the further, I had said, I want the campsite available that's furthest from the bathrooms and everything, right? And so they gave the one at that time to me, and then the other people had canceled. These 4 guys were military men from Lejeune, and they wanted the one furthest away from everything that they could have, and that was the one right next to me.
They probably went back to the park ranger and was like, really? You put us next to some woman?
Yeah, this sick woman.
It looked
that.
like she was gonna knife us every time we just
Yeah,
walked
I
by.
know. I'm not even afraid of
That was
bears.
literally her in the middle of the night.
I'm not even afraid of bears, but I'm a little concerned about going camping and a petrified woman will leap out with a knife and pepper spray.
Yeah, boy, if that's the only fear that the men have in the room, you're counting yourself very fortunate.
Yep.
I'd be
So,
afraid to be on an island all alone.
So that's it. So is it intuition or was it manifestation of events? That's a question. And that's where Troward says that we get into these, Selena is saying we have, if we trust that initial hit before the objective mind can get into it and bring all of this other stuff to surface, trust that. Whether, you know, maybe sometime you want to get off the plane, maybe not.
Yeah.
I'm only flying on Tuesday, Kate. Thank you.
Maybe there's a little creature on the wing like in that movie.
Maybe it's anaconda and all these
I
snakes.
know, there's a snake on the plane.
That doesn't scare me.
Like the Twilight
Okay.
Zone, they're out the window.
Unless there's any other, I'd like to just welcome Chris real quick, who popped in the last 5 minutes and so.
Hey,
Chris. Hi.
Hi there.
Do you want to share anything about intuition or cause and condition? All right.
No, I mean, I felt like, you know, I mean, as a practitioner, I had intuition. In that, you know, that's how we treat a lot of times for our clients. As a child, I had intuition, and a very good intuition at that. I consider myself to be a mystic.
Oh, we didn't get into mysticism. We hit telepathy a little bit. Wow, we have so much to talk about next week. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you for asking.
Okay, so, tonight, we're gonna do the offering, I'll do the blessing and the treatment at the same time, if that's what I decided. That's what I decided. Is that what I decided? Yes.
Oh, get it. Oh my lord.
You're not gonna flick it off for her?
What?
I almost crashed my car
Wait,
today because one flew.
They're endangered here, though.
Yeah, right. Endangered means there's millions and billions of them, yes.
I knew it was a sanctuary for them.
You guys, let's hold a consciousness. You want me to put that outside for you?
I got it. This is nice.
I'm not afraid. All right. even so, in gratitude and thankfulness, I know that the offerings that are in this basket, as I say every week, are only symbols of energy and symbols of energy of the love and the information and the joy that was shared here tonight. There is laughter in this basket. There is caring and compassion in these baskets here now. And I know that as God is there, God is here, and God is all around us. And we are so blessed. And I'm grateful for this blessing. I'm grateful for this gathering tonight. And knowing this in safe journeys, and all is well, I say. And so it is. All right, thank you for a wonderful night.